just waiting for you. Do-do, 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 do-do.
Thank you for tuning in to episode 41 of the Brooklyn Fishing Club podcast. I'm your host, Victor Lucia, founder and president of the BFC. This episode is brought to you by Brooklyn Fishing Club, the premier fishing club of New York City. Join the club today and we'll send you 2 t-shirts, 2 different designs, 2 pins, also 2 different designs, and a 60-inch BFC logo measuring tape. You'll also gain access to our private online forum, events, trips, and more. If you have any questions about membership or anything club related, visit brooklynfishingclub.com for more info. On this episode, we have a very special guest, someone who is a childhood hero of mine. Before fishing channels on YouTube existed, he was making waves in the game by hosting and producing his own fishing videos. He's a legendary pioneer of the sport of fishing as we know it. He's inspired generations of anglers to follow their dreams, and most of all, to have fun while doing it. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Bill Dance.
Hello.
Hey, Bill.
Hey, Victor. How are you?
How's it going, man?
Oh, just hanging in there like a loose tooth. Everything's fine, buddy.
That's great. That's great. I'm so grateful for you to be calling in right now. This is like it's like a childhood dream come true for me right now, just talking to you.
I appreciate it, buddy. It's good to talk to you.
Man.
Glad we could get together.
I've got so many questions for you. What's your earliest fishing memory?
There's quite a few. I guess some of the earliest would be fishing with my grandfather. Growing up as a youngster, I was blessed that I had a daddy and a granddaddy that introduced me to this sport. And I spent a lot of time, more so with my granddaddy, over in Middle Tennessee, a little town called Lynchburg, Tennessee. That's the home of Jack Daniels. And Lynchburg was a small town. My granddaddy was a doctor there. And they lived, my grandmother and granddaddy, within a stone's throw of a little creek called Mulberry Creek. And I spent more time on that creek than I did every awakened hour was on that creek. The time I'd get up in the morning till the time almost till dark, wading the creek, fishing in the creek for catfish. If the creek was clear, wading the creek, just catching what we call black perch, which actually was a rock bass, and then smallmouth in the creek. But just the memories of fishing moving water, which even today is still my favorite form of fishing. But fishing in that creek was perhaps my earliest fishing memories. And then as I grew older, my granddaddy, being a doctor, he taught me a lot about fish anatomy. More so, much more about anatomy, how fish see, how fish hear, about wading the creek, always wade upstream, your shadows, the sound of wading in the gravel, the sound that you make, how fish hear, the casting your shadow in that clear water. And as I grew older, that played a major role in my fishing success. I'll tell you about that in a minute. And then as we fished together, as I grew older, he started teaching me techniques. But I guess the earliest fishing memories were fishing with my granddaddy.
Your granddad and your dad, they were doctors. Was there any backlash amongst your family when you
Oh
said,
no,
I'm not going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a professional angler"?
no, absolutely not. For 5 generations back in my family, my daddy was a doctor. My granddaddy, my great granddaddy, my great great granddaddy, my great 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 granddaddy. For 5 generations back were doctors, and I had even considered that. Um, and my parents didn't try to push me into that. They never suggested me to be a doctor, but I had considered it and looked looked at it, and even uh, considered pre med. And as a youngster, just when I just started to, when we were younger, we could get a driver's permit, and you could drive in the daylight hours. You couldn't drive after dark. You were limited with your driver's permit. But when I first got my driver's permit, I happened to be driving, and I was following a guy pulled out on a motorcycle in front of me, and I was driving behind him at a short distance, and a car came across, and another car turned in front of him, and it was a major accident that he was involved in, and I was less than 50 yards behind him, or not even that far. And what I saw, I stopped and jumped out of the truck, and I ran up behind him. And just as I got there, what I experienced, I looked down, and I couldn't believe what I saw. It was one of the most grotesque things I've ever seen. And another car stopped in the southbound lane, and another car pulled around me. Well, fortunately, the guy that going southbound was a doctor, and the car coming around me going northbound, there were 3 nurses in that car. And they ran up to me and they said, "Are you a doctor?" And I said, "No." And they jumped down, and a police car pulled up just a short period of time. They radioed for an ambulance, and I was standing there, so I backed up out of the way, and the policeman said, "Can you move your truck?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Did you see what happened?" And I said, "Yes." A vehicle came in from this way, and the truck, and I explained what I saw. And I realized right then, I said, "This is something I cannot do. I can't be a doctor. I can't do this." And I said, "No way." And that turned me 180 degrees on wanting to be a doctor. And I said, uh, in the weeks and months later after that, I said, "I don't know how I can do this." And my love for fishing, love for the outdoors, I said, "I want to somehow, some way, someday get into the fishing industry. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I want to do this. I want to get into the fishing industry some way." And I kind of just set a goal uh, mentally. That's what I wanted to do. So I I kind of just set that goal, and as months and the years passed, I always dreamed of that happening. And so uh, I don't I don't know whatever happened to the fella in the wreck. I don't what I saw. I don't think he made it. But anyway, it changed my direction in life right then.
So what were some of the initial steps that you took to get into the fishing industry?
My parents were uh, very close to uh, an elderly couple that owned a distributing company. And the distributing company back then owned a big furniture distributing company, and the other side of the distributing company distributed hardware and sporting goods, unloading box cars. And then I worked my way into the working in insurance claims for damaged goods. And then I worked my way into the showroom, and they would bring the dealers, furniture dealers would bring their retail customers in. And they had a big discount showroom floor there. And anyway, I worked my way into that, and a hardware territory opened. And I really wanted to get into that because that had sporting goods in it. And I asked for it, and they gave it to me. And that got me out in the territory. And then they would have big hardware shows there at this distributing company that I work for, and I would get to meet tackle people. Tackle people, reps would come in, and I'd get to meet them, and I'd get to talking to them, and I don't know, one thing led to this, and one thing led to that, and I was selling tackle to hardware stores. And back in those days, you couldn't buy fishing. We didn't have Bass Pro Shop. Back in those days, that's the only place you could buy those type baits and that type of tackle. I don't know. As time moved on, I continued to fish, and of course, I loved to fish. And I would meet these reps that worked for Head and Lure Company, and Stren that sold fishing line, and tackle companies that worked for Wright McGill and Eagle Claw, and that would come to this company that I worked for. Kept thinking maybe a rep job would open up someday, but it never came about. But anyway, my desire and dream to go to work, to get into the tackle business, it really never opened up at that time. I heard of a big bass tournament that was going to take place on Beaver Lake in northwest Arkansas. And I had been doing a lot of fishing around Memphis, and our outdoor editor at our local newspaper had written several articles on me, and I was wrapping fishing rods and selling them. And he did an article on me about doing that. And I was getting quite a bit of business as a result of that. I finally got a phone call from a Ford dealer in Memphis, and he was the biggest Ford dealer in the United States. And it was Hull Dobbs Ford. And at that time, it was the biggest Ford dealer in the country. And the guy by the name of Oscar Oakley. And the message said, "Can you come to Mr. Oakley's office? He'd like to meet with you." And I said, yeah. I don't know what in the world he'd want to meet with me for. But anyway, I went over to his office, and I walked into his office, and he had 2-inch plush carpet across his floor, had a big circular walnut burl desk, and it looked like a presidential office. And as I walked across that office, he jumped up out of his desk, and he walked around his desk and met me halfway walking across that office, and walked over and shook my hand. He said, "Bill Dance, I'm Oscar Oakley." And I said, "Well, Mr. Oakley," he said, "call me Oscar." And he owned, I don't know how many dealerships across the country, but he had a monstrous dealership in Memphis. He said, "Have a seat." And I sat down. He said, "Tell you why I called you. I understand there's a big bass tournament going to take place in about a month up on Beaver Lake in northwest Arkansas." And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I'd like to sponsor you in that event." And I really didn't even know what he was talking about as far as sponsorship and all that. And I said, what do you mean? He said, "I'd like to pay you entry fee, and I'd like to pay you your expenses, and to that event. Well, that was kind of blew me away. And he said, "You bring all your papers over here, and I'll show you how we're going to do this." So the following week, I brought my entry forms and everything over. And he had a secretary fill them out and put a check with it and mailed it in. And he said, "You bring me back all your expenses, and I want to pay for them." And I thanked him, and so I went to the tournament, and that was Ray Scott's very first tournament. And as luck would have it, I was in first place the first 2 days of that tournament and ended up finishing second. And that was the first paycheck I ever got. I think I won $1,000 finishing second. First place only paid $2,000. A good buddy of mine, Stan Sloan, out of Nashville, won that tournament. And I came back and I went to Mr. Oakley's office and I said, here's what I won, and I need you to take your expenses out of it. He said, "No, sir." He said, "That's your money." And I said, "Well, I need to pay you back." And he said, "No, you don't. No, I've sponsored you that, and that's on me." He said, "When is the next tournament?" And I said, "Well, I think there's one at Kentucky Lake." And he said, "Well, you send me the information. I want to sponsor you in that." And I said, "Well, I really appreciate you doing this." And he said, "No, sir, I want to do it." Well, he sponsored me in that particular event, and I finished second in it. And he wouldn't accept any money for it or anything. And so he said, you just keep going doing." And I called him and told him how I did. He said, "I've been keeping up with you." And the next tournament was at Smith Lake in Alabama. Ray Scott had a big event there, and that was my first win. And that was in I want to say the fall or the early spring of '68, and I won it. And it was kind of a unique tournament, and I caught my fish extremely deep, and I won that event. And right after that, I won a couple of $1,000s. And I called Mr. Oakley, and he said, "Way to go." And the next tournament we had right after that was at Rayburn Reservoir in Texas. And that was the Texas National Tournament. And as luck would have it, I won it. And just a few months after that, and then the next tournament, we went to Ross Barnett at Jackson, Mississippi, and I won it. So I'd had 2 seconds, and then I won the next 3 in a row at Smith Lake and at Jasper, Alabama, and then the Texas National at Jasper, Texas on Rayburn, and then Ross Barnett, I won it. Well, when I came home, I had won 2 seconds and 3 firsts. And that following week, I got 3 phone calls. One from Jim Bagley Bait Company in Winter Haven, Florida. I got another phone call from Ken White at Hedden in Doalgic, Michigan. And I got another phone call from Nick Cream in Tyler, Texas. And all of them had offered me a job to go to work for them. And I thought, my dreams come true. Nick Cream, the inventor of the plastic worm, it was pretty enticing. And he invited Diane and I, my wife, to fly to Shreveport, which is just north of Tyler, Texas, is where Cream Lure Company's plant. And they picked us up on a Friday morning, and they drove us down to Tyler, Texas, and we stayed with Nick and Cosmo Cream for that weekend. And what Nick offered me, he said, "Bill, I'd like for you to go to work for me. I'm going to furnish you a company car of your choice. I'll double your salary. I want you to fish with uh, riders. I want you to fish with buyers and our retail outlets, and I want you to show them how to fish plastic worms and fish our products, and I want you to show them how to do that. If you got any ideas about how we can, I said, well, what I think we need is a kit. If we can take one of your better worms, and I can tell you, you got a good one called the Shimmy Gal, and it was a 7.5 inch worm. If you could put that, say 6 worms, 3 slip sinkers, and 3 hooks in a kit, he said, how about taking the 6 inch worm, the 7.5 inch, and the 10 inch, and have 3 different packs, and we can market those, and if you can promote those to start with. And I said, yes, sir, we can do that. So I went to work. I called Mr. Oakley and I told him what I'd been offered, and he said, I said, without your help on the get go, and I thanked him. He wished me the best of luck, and I went to my boss, told my boss where I was working at the distributing company I'd been offered a fabulous job, and he wished me luck. And I went to work for Cream in 1960, early 69 or late 68, whenever it was, and doing what I had just dreamed of wanting to do all my life. And here I was. I'd go to Toledo Bend for about a week, and Nick would send in buyers or riders, and I had to take my boat. I'd go down there and I'd check into a lodge, and the riders would come in, and I'd take them out and show them how to fish the Nick's baits, and I'd show them how to catch fish on it, and they'd write about it. And then there was a big chain of sporting goods stores called Oshman's, and they'd bring their store people in, and I'd take them out fishing, and I'd show them how to fish the worm. I'd entertain them. And before long, Sam Walton had introduced some stores, and we started entertaining them. And there was a company called Woolco came along, and then they were opening stores, and I was taking their people fishing, their buyers, and it just started growing and growing and growing. It just started growing. And then I got to thinking, if I can do this for Nick, why can't I do it for myself? And I went and talked to Nick about it, and he started laughing. And he said, I figured that day would come. And he said, look, you see that door right there? I said, yes, sir. He said, it swings both ways. You go try it. And if it doesn't work out, you come back and see me. And I said, okay. And I appreciate it. Well, I left, and I started out, and Charles Spence and I started Strike King Lure Company. We got in partnership together, and we started a little lure company here in Memphis called Strike King. And we rocked along with that for a year or so. And I continued to fish tournaments, and Charles tried it for a while. And I had writers want me to go fishing, and they want to do stories. And Charles, then I'd leave Charles here making lures and spinner baits, and we started making plastic worms and lizards and other type of lures. And Charles says, well, think I need to go? And I said, well, I'll check with the writer. And the writer says, no, I just need you to go, Bill. And I've got to the point where I was feeling real bad, leaving Charles behind. And I don't know, it got to the point where the writers wanted me to go, and they didn't want Charles to go. and I could see it was hurting Charles's feelings. And Charles was starting to get, he was doing all the work, and I was gone all the time, and I was fishing tournaments. I just said, this ain't gonna work. So I moved on, and I went to work for Cotton Cordell, and doing what I was doing for Nick. And and then Cotton said, something we need to do, Bill. We need to start a TV show. He said, well, Jerry's a good guy. Jerry was doing a real popular fishing show. Jerry ended up buying Bass, if you'll remember, in the later years. But Jerry was a good buddy and a good friend. And I doubt I'd be doing TV today had it not been for Jerry.
Tell me
Yeah.
how the Banjo Minnow was created and why do you think it was so successful?
Well, Joe Renowski made that thing, and we promoted it. It was just through promotion. There's a lot of promotion behind it. That was the key to it. It caught fish, and it got a tremendous amount of promotion.
How did you lock down all that promotion? Was it organic or was it were you reaching out to other companies to promote it? I mean, how did that become such a hit?
Through television.
Were you paying for ad spots? Like how did that work?
I didn't do. I just promoted it. Another company had it. They just asked me to promote it.
Do you have any superstitions when it comes to fishing?
I just think only superstition I have is if I've got deep water fish located, I don't have superstitions. If I have shallow water fish located, I have superstitions about frontal systems the day after a frontal system moved through.
So it's very limited to a certain window.
It's just pressure change on shallow water fish. I think deep water fish are not nearly as affected with pressure changes as shallow water fish. I'm talking about high pressure.
Yeah.
High pressure followed by a frontal system. Deep water fish are not near as affected, but shallow water fish are. And I have superstitions. I don't like to fish shallow fish after a frontal system.
Interesting.
And that's the only superstition I have.
Very cool.
I don't have a superstition. They say east winds. Fish winds out of the east, fish fight the least. Well, that's caused by a pressure. That's caused by. It's not caused by the wind. It's caused by a pressure system that causes the wind.
Whose idea was it to put out the blooper reels?
It came about as we had a major sponsor that wanted us to do a rerun. It was Walmart, and Walmart. I hated to do a rerun, and they said our buyer kind of bought heavy on a particular lure, and they said, "Can you rerun that show again? Because we need to lower our inventory." And I went, but Walmart, our biggest at that time was our biggest sponsor. And I said, I hate it, but I will. What do you tell Walmart? And so we reran it. We sold twice as many the second time we ran it as the first time. Well, they came back the third time and they said, Bill, in the fall of the year, they said, our buyer overbought the second run. Can you rerun it the third time? I said, golly, Dick, Dick Mayhem was a buyer. I said, Dick, he said, look, we sold twice as many the second run. I said, all right. Well, I went out and I tried to get a show. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. let me, okay, I'll rerun it. I'll run it. And we couldn't find the master on that show. We couldn't find the master. So I said, all right, give me the bait and I'll run do a show on it. I'll run do a show on it. So I ran out and I was trying to, and I couldn't catch enough fish on it to feed a fat cat. And, but I did end up catching enough fish to do a half a show. And so our editors, our producer said, let me see what I can do. So he made the first half of the show look real good with a half a show on that bait. And he just went back in the archives and he pulled a bunch of outtakes, blooper stuff that we had. And he butted that blooper stuff up to that half show on that bait, on that bait. You follow me? So it made me think, well, thunder. Reruns, a lot of people are not going to see your show the first time or the second time. Everybody doesn't watch that show when you run it. You follow me? So, and we just got all kinds of reviews on the blooper stuff we ran. Well, about 2 weeks after it ran, we got a call from Dick Clark Productions, and they said, "Hey, can we use some of your blooper stuff?" And we said, "Sure." So they said, "Can we have about 3 of those bloopers you ran on your program a few weeks ago?" So Tony sent them 3 bloopers, and they said, how much are those? And I said, well, that kind of promotion on NBC on Dick Clark Productions, Dick Clark and Ed McMahon ran Super Bloopers and Practical Jokes. They had a program there.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not going to charge them for that. That's just, that's good promotion for us. Well, I said, no. We have to pay for them. And so they paid us, I think, $400 a clip. And I said, well, I really don't want to charge them. And Tony said, no, they insist they want to pay for them. I said, okay. So the next week they called us back and said, we need 6 more. So Tony started digging through the archives. He found about 15 outtakes. So he sent them 6 of them. They sent us $2,400. Well, Rogan's Heroes, a blooper out in California, contacted us and said, "Will you send us some? Can you send us some tapes?" Then CBS started out a blooper show, an outtake show, and they asked us, "Have you got some bloopers?" We said, "Yeah." Then the BBC in London contacted us. And then Crook and Chase on TNN contacted us and said, "Can you send us some bloopers?" Well, thunder. We were doing real well selling our blooper tapes. And we didn't ask for money for them. We were going to give, but it was customary for the networks, if they received stuff, they had to pay for them. They wanted to pay for them. So we were doing pretty good on that. So the following year, Tony said, "Why don't we just put together a blooper tape?" And it went boom. It did wonders. And then we put an hour-long blooper tape together, and we marketed it, and it boom, it just took off like a late freight. It just moved out. It did wonders. Well, we came out with blooper 2, blooper 3, and it's done wonders.
Do you have a favorite blooper? I know the dog attack looks very rough. The snake out of the tree is a classic. Do you have a favorite?
Well, I think the dog when that dog leaving the ground and coming through that window and getting my head off my head, that was a pretty doggone good one. I think the one when I made the cast, my lure went in that tree, and I was in the bend of that little river, and I stood up in that boat to get my lure, and I got in that wasp, those big red wasps. We titled that one 13 Strikes on One Cast. Um, that was that's a pretty good one. And the one with the jib that cameraman, I was trying to set up a shot, and that big jib came around with that camera on and hit me in the side of the head. That was a pretty good one.
I feel like you're somebody who has really outdone themselves in the fishing industry. How have you kept it fresh? How have you kept it going without losing sight of the fun of it all?
Well, it's really the only life I know, and it's just something we've been doing for such a long, long time. And I enjoy doing what I do. I really do. And I work with a lot of very, very talented people that that make it fun, and they we have a good time doing what we do.
That was another thing I was going to ask you about. Are there any people that you film with that have been there since you first started, or has it been a rotating cast throughout the years?
Well, um, I've got one guy that's been. I've got one guy that's been with me for. I've got some sponsors that have been with me for 50 something years. I'm trying to think. We've been doing this for 56 years. I've got one sponsor that's been with me for 56 years.
Is there anybody on the team that's like a film
Yeah.
editor or a camera guy?
No, I lost Tony. Tony was with me. Tony passed away. Uh, Shane has been with me. One of my editors has been with me for probably 35 years.
Wow.
Um, I've got one cameraman that's been with me probably for 30 years. Oh yeah, we've had. Let's see, Leslie's been with me for 20 something years. My son has been with me forever. He shoots, but he does a lot of our social media stuff. Sure.
How have you managed to balance family life and fishing?
I've just got uh, I've got great, just a great family that just works very close with me. Uh, my 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 son, oldest son, works with me. Uh, he does. He traveled with us and shot video. He shot underwater, and then he shot number two camera for a long time with me. He now does a ton of social media stuff, and our social media is really, really going strong for us now. Uh, I've got my daughter; she handles a lot of our personal stuff. I couldn't make it without Pamela. Um, and then I've got another son that does all our computer graphic stuff and all our closed caption stuff. And then I've got a wife that we have four children, and Diane, of course, she's been the biggest supporter of all. She's always said you can do anything in the world if you set your mind to it. You set goals in life, and you work toward those goals. And she always believed that I could do this, and she's been a tremendous supporter.
What kind of advice would you give to someone trying to make a living off of fishing?
Well, I was lucky that I made mine through the tournaments, and it seemed like when one door closed, another one opened, and I was very, very fortunate to have done well in those tournaments. And as a result of the lucky, uh, that I got in at the right time, and I met a lot of good people. I met the right sponsors. I did well that I landed some good sponsorships. And like I said, I've got a couple of sponsors that were with me in the beginning. And now that I got out of the tournaments and went into television, I mean, even I had them when I was doing TV and tournaments. And uh, I get a lot of emails and letters from this younger set of anglers that are fishing the collegiate trail and high school. But the first thing I tell them is get the best education you can possibly get. Without that, you're not going to get anywhere in life.
Yeah.
You've got to have a good education. Um, and then once you get a good education and you land something, whatever you decide to do in life, you've got to have a good education. Without that, you're not going to get to first base. But then once you start competing, you've got to be successful. Um, and once you're successful, you've got to come across. You've got to be able to sell yourself and to be able to sell your sponsors' products. And you've got to make a good name for yourself. You've got to be consistent, uh, not just once, not just twice, but you got to be up there time and time again. It's like Kevin Van Dam. Like Kevin comes across good. He's got a good personality. He sells himself. He can sell sponsors' products, and he's consistent. That's what you've got to do. You've got to be that way. Um, a sponsor wants somebody that is consistent, uh, knows how to sell their products, can come across to the public extremely well. He can walk the walk and he can talk the talk. You got to win. You got to be up there in the top time and time again. It's hard to do.
What makes a tournament bass angler great?
Well, what makes one tournament angler better? What is a defining quality that sets one angler ahead and the rest of the one that wins, the one that wins, and that it. You how do you win? Vince Lombardi once said, "Winning is achieved through determination." And I don't care how determined you are, you're not going to win every single time. And when you compete against Mother Nature and her creatures, you can't beat them every time. But there's a word called consistency. You you can be consistent, but you can be in the top. You can be in the top 10. You can be in the top five more than you can be number one. But you have to be you have to be there. It's like the Patriots, the New England Patriots. They're consistent. They were consistent year after year. Tom Brady, he was consistent. Um, you got to keep your name out in front of the public. You got to come across. You got to come across, and it's hard to do, but you've got to be a good angler. Uh, and it's like uh, it's just like Vince Lombardi said. Winning is achieved through determination. You can be determined, and I don't care how determined you are, you're not going to be successful every time. But you have to have the confidence, you've got to have the ability, you've got to have the desire, you've got to work at it. You've got to learn all you can possibly learn about it and learn about the habits and the habitat of your quarry, and you've got to just study it and just bear down and work at it and be yourself. And I had a good fisherman tell me one time, the best fisherman I ever met in my life. He said, "Bill, you have got to be consistent. You got to do your thing, and you can't listen to other people. You've got to do your thing. There may be, you know, there may be 4 or 5 patterns out there at one time. You've got to establish one pattern and stick to it. You can't listen to what this guy in the back of the creek throwing a crankbait and catching him in 2 or 3 feet of water. Or this fisherman's out here, he's doing this with a topwater bait. You got to do your thing and stick with your pattern. And whatever you establish, you do your thing. Strategy wins tournaments. And you have to do your thing and not listen to somebody else. And uh, That's what I've always tried to do. I've tried to just do what I know how to do and do it to the best of my ability. And that's what I was doing when I was winning tournaments. I I learned how to fish deep water, and I stayed with deep water, and that's how I won the majority of my tournaments back in those early days.
When you're on the circuit, there's got to be some places that you haven't fished.
Well, most of them are. Most of them are. You just experience is the greatest teacher in the world, and the more experienced you are, the better the chances are you're going to have. But it's just uh, it's a hard road. I've seen some of these guys come up, and I look at them and I said, oh, it's just going to be it's tough. It's really tough. They got a $50,000 boat and they're on a new body of water. They've never been on it before. And where are you from? They tell me where they're from. And here they are on they're accustomed to fishing highland type lakes, and here they are on a lowland type lake, and the surroundings are 180 compared to what they're used to fishing, and it's just tough.
What's next for Bill Dance? What are some of the projects you're working on?
Well, you're gonna laugh when I tell you what I'm looking at right now. Uh, I'm looking at I got a 50 to 70 foot pattern Saturday morning on the Mississippi River for blue cats on a Bass Pro Shop catfish tournament. That's what I'm looking at right now.
That sounds fun.
Oh, it is fun. I love to do it. We've been fishing through late September. Well, it starts in August, but a lot of it starts late August, September, and October. The Mississippi is usually low, and there's a lot of tournaments that take place on the Mississippi from, say, Vicksburg to St. Louis, or St. Louis to Vicksburg. And we fish a lot of those catfish tournaments for big blues on the Mississippi. And it's really a lot of fun. It'll attract, I think we've got over 100 boats at Bass Pro this Saturday. Um, and we had one we had one 2 weeks ago at Helena, Arkansas, and it was a 2 day tournament. You weigh your three best fish in Friday and your three best fish in Saturday. Um, we had a little problem Friday, but we had we got our limit, and then we got our limit Saturday, and we had our best six fish weighed 222 pounds, and but buddy of mine, my buddy I'm fishing with Saturday, his best six fish weighed 382 pounds. That's good sized catfish.
It's a lot of
So
catfish.
yeah, that's six fish. You can figure it out. You know.
So do you do any saltwater fishing?
Yeah, we do. We do 39 shows a year. We shoot 39 original shows a year. 13 uh, Bill Dance saltwater and 26 freshwater.
What are some of the most challenging shoots that you've been on?
Well, we do. Most of our shoots are inshore. We go offshore a little bit, but most of the shoots we do are the type of shoots that most people can relate to and can afford. But uh, challenging type shoots are, oh, I'd say permit, catching permit, uh, on light tackle. They're smart. They shallow. They spook easy. They're hard to target. Uh, big barracuda and inshore. Uh, a big barracuda. They're hard to target, but they're a tremendous fish to catch. They're just uh, they're the complete package.
Is there any fish that's left on your bucket list?
Probably big sturgeon. I want to catch a big sturgeon, and I've got two more shows to shoot. One will be on spinner shark at Destin next week, and after this catfish tournament, and then I'll probably do something on red snapper out of Orange Beach, Florida, Orange Beach, Alabama. It's scheduled next Tuesday, and then the following Thursday we'll be at Destin doing a shark show on Makos and on spinner shark.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it is. It is. But that'll wrap us up for our saltwater shoot. We just finished Johnny Morris, who's founder of Bass Pro. Johnny and I just got back from, we did tarpon and big grouper. We caught 8 grouper in the 300 to 400 pound range down at Fort Pierce, Florida, and then went on down to Jupiter and caught he thought his biggest snook, about a 49 incher.
Wow.
But we did a 2-part show down at Juniper, catching some really, really nice snook. And that's fun on light tackle.
Yeah.
But I enjoy that. I really do. And catching small tarpon on light tackle in the tributaries that run into the Indian River is a lot of fun.
What's your PB largemouth?
14-1. Caught it in Tennessee, believe it or not.
What's the story behind that one?
Well, I'll tell you the day I caught it. It's the day that we lost Dale Earnhardt in that race. It was in February, I believe it was, and I believe they were racing. I believe it was Daytona. I believe it was. I was free falling a spinner bait along a creek channel in 10 feet of water, and the fish hit it, and I didn't realize the fish was as big as it was, but he came toward me. I was out over the channel, and he bushed me in a treetop, and I worked with him for a little while and finally got him out, and then got him up and weighed him on some Hansen digital scales, and he weighed 14-1. But I got him up and then weighed him and then released him. The biggest smallmouth weighed 8.3. I caught him at Pickwick Lake in Tennessee. Those are the personal best.
So what do you like catching more, smallies or largemouth?
Smallmouth. Oh, yeah, definitely smallmouth. And we've got a lot of them in Tennessee, but we've got a lot of good smallmouth lakes from Dale Hollow to our Pickwick chain, our Tennessee River chain. It's got a lot of smallmouth in it. And we have Woods Reservoir. The Tennessee River is where I caught my big one, but Dale Hollow, Center Hill, a lot of lakes around it in Tennessee have, I think our world record smallmouth came out of Dale Hollow.
With the proper bait selected, shouldn't you be able to catch fish in any lake at any time, or are they sometimes just flat out not biting?
Oh, there's a lot of times they're just not biting. There's a lot of things that cause that too. It could be, fish could be biting and you are not fishing the right depth with the wrong presentation, or depth is critical. I've fished on lakes when somebody just wore them out and I didn't do any good at all. It's just has a lot to do with you can be around active fish with the wrong presentation, with the wrong bait, with the wrong retrieve, you have the wrong presentation, and still not catch any fish or any fish. When I get in the boat with somebody, I said, you try this, I'll try that. 2 different colors can make a difference. Presentation can make a difference. The depth that the bait's running can make a difference. The retrieve speed, a lot of things can make a difference. I said, try this and I'll try that. And you fish this depth, I'll fish that depth. You just mix it up until you try to find out, fish on one end of the lake may be biting totally different from the fish on the middle part of the lake or the lower end of the lake. They might be in 2 different depths of water. The fish on the upper end of the lake may be considerably shallower than the fish in the middle section of the lake or even the lower section of the lake. Um, a lot has to do with the water temperature, the clarity of the water. A lot has to do with, uh, of course, the temperature of the water. A lot has to do with the clarity of the water. There's a lot of factors that depend on uh, the bait you use, the depth you fish, the color of the bait, the presentation you use.
What is one of the bodies of water in America that you love to fish the most?
Well, I grew up fishing Pickwick Lake on the Tennessee River. And the reason I like it so much, it's got spotted bass in it, it's got smallmouth in it, and it's got largemouth in it.
Everything you need right there.
Right. And it's the type of lake you can fish summer, fall, winter, spring. Cool water, hot water, muddy water, clear water. It's got everything you need. It's got it's the forage base is tremendous. The water quality is fabulous. It's got moving water because it's built between hydroelectric facilities. The water's constantly turning over. Moving. It's so many different lakes in one. It's got highland features. It's got midland features. It's got lowland features. It's got many tributaries that come into it. Many spring creeks that feed it. The state owns it. It's part of the TVA chain. You know?
I want to come fish it with you.
Well, come on, we'll go.
Let's make it happen.
We'll go, Victor.
Oh, that's so awesome. Bill, you have no idea how big this is for me. This is a milestone in my interviewing career. You are the ultimate legend. I mean, you have pioneered the way for everybody. Everybody who's making a living off YouTube. Anybody who's making a living off fishing in the entertainment aspect of it owes you a major league high five.
Well, buddy, I certainly appreciate that. It's great talking to you. But you've got an open invitation. Anytime you're close by, give me a holler and we'll go wet a line. And I certainly do appreciate you giving me a holler. And anytime you want to, you're sitting around and you want to talk, just give me a holler. I'm always available.
I'm smiling ear to ear. You have no idea what this means to me, Bill. Thank you so much.
All right, buddy. Listen, thank you. God bless you. And let me hear from you soon.
God bless you too. I'll talk to you soon, Bill. Thanks again. And thank you for everything you've done for the fishing industry. You have just, people that should thank you don't even know it. You have done more for this industry than anybody out here. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right, buddy. Thank you, my friend. Enjoyed talking to you. Let me hear from you soon.
All right. I'll talk to you soon, Bill. Thanks again.
Bless you, buddy. Thank you.
Just waiting for you to do,
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Brooklyn Fishing Club podcast. We really appreciate your feedback, so please like, subscribe, share, leave us a review, let us know what you think, let us know who you want to hear next. And if you have any questions, visit brooklynfishingclub.com or shoot me an email at info@brooklynfishingclub.com.